How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan, and as always, we have Merriel Solesky here. Say hi, Merriel.
Yo, how's it going?
Uh, I know it's been a while. How's the fishing been?
Other than my walk-up spots, it's been kind of haven't been on the kayak much, but it's just mainly hitting up the walk-up spots. But
um, we got
get
Merriel
my gear.
slacking here. Merrill's been slacking.
Yeah, I have. I'm getting my gear tuned up for it's about that time to start heading offshore for us in the Texas coast, a little bit more than usual, right? So
Yep.
I'm
I know it's
excited.
it's
Yeah,
warming up, and I know at least here in Galveston today and tomorrow, um, we're getting towards the end of March here. We have some pretty nice beachfront conditions. I'm assuming offshore is going to be nice as well, and hopefully this season shapes up to be a really good one for you.
yeah. That's gonna be my main focus. I will. I think I'm doing a couple trips inshore with some people that if you buy a property or sell a property and you go through Brittany, whether it's commercial or residential, she is paying for a guided trip with me, and she pays for a full trip. So just to give you the heads up, so a couple of people have went through Brittany. Thank you guys. Thank you for your support. And so I'll be taking them inshore or offshore, whatever you prefer, whatever you're trying to fish for, accomplish, whether it's trout. I know for some reason a lot of people have been really wanting to go sheepheads fishing, which is unique for me because I really don't do a lot of sheephead fishing. I know how to catch them, right? So we were successful the last three times we went. So it's a different style than I typically do, but hey, I'm doing whatever you guys want, whether it's flounder, sheephead, redfish, shallow, sight casting, or going offshore and then learning some stuff offshore that will be paid for if you go through Brittany.
Uh, those of you guys out there, be sure to ask Merrill for his swordfish fishing trips and see how that goes.
We're not doing that. um,
um, Before we get too much further into our session today, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Merrill, lovely segue for his wife. Brittany Solesky, if you're looking for property here in Texas, in Houston, either residential or commercial, reach out to her. You can reach her at 281-740-0498, and she'll get you squared away, find your dream property or a place for your business, whatever it may be. Reach out to her. Also, Dirty South Kayak Anglers. If you're looking for a Facebook group to talk fishing and kayaking here in Texas Coast, look up Dirty South Kayak Anglers on Facebook and join up. Great group of guys and gals on there. 4A Printing. I know Aaron's been real busy. His daughter has been doing some stuff with the Houston Rodeo, so he's been busy. But if you're looking for any custom merch such as towels or buffs or anything like that, reach out to him and he'll get you set up for all of your needs. And also wanted to give a shout out to uh, the Matagorda Kayak Fishing, another Facebook page. If you're looking for any information on that, specifically in Matagorda, talk to them and join up that group. They have some upcoming tournaments. We have the Spring Slam tournament on Saturday, April 12th. So if you want to look that up on Facebook, you can find that there. Also, on April 5th, we have the West Bay Blackjack Fishing Tournament and fundraiser that's put on by Fish West End. So just some upcoming tournaments that are upcoming. So I know the last couple of weeks, uh, we haven't been really on a lot. Just a lot of things going on. I got sick at some point. Is out of commission for a week. I've just been busy. I'm sure Merrill, you've been busy. It was real funny because uh, um, I was like, I haven't heard from Merrill in a while, and I sent you a message. You didn't answer for like 3 days, and then you called me, and then I was in the middle of doing something, and I didn't return your call until like 3 days later after that. So it's just
yeah,
been, I'm sure it's been busy, right?
yeah, I could put the voodoo doll away now. So I was all like,
Okay.
oh, he's not answering. So I'm like, okay.
um, so, but in between all that, we've had some cold fronts come through. Hopefully, they stop. I believe we have another one coming up here in the Galveston area on Monday, and then who knows after that. They're not anything major, something small. Though the last one we got down to the 40s, so that's kind of nice for March, even though it kind of sucked because that's spring break time around here. But cold fronts, meaning all the water in the bay gets pushed out, and you have some really low areas. And I've been on a kick for whatever reason. I just been finding lots and lots of redfish in my trout holes. Um, and actually, I wanted to kind of we'll go into the kind of the side casting part of it because I'm sure that's what everybody wants to hear about. But yeah, I was out fishing this really deep canal uh, that it's really good around this time when it's high tide. And I've been going, and it's been just it'd be incoming at the very beginning of the incoming whenever I've been fishing. So an area where it's typically like 10 to 12 feet, uh, it would be it'd be somewhere between like 8 ish. um, and all these exposed rocks, this exposed shell up against the shoreline would come up. All the stuff that I knew was there, but I started finding that once I get to the edge of that all that structure, with a really light jig head, just dropping it down, the redfish would just start hammering it. And I know there's trout there because they usually would be there, but the redfish would just eat them up before they could get there. Have you had that situation where you're just casting along the edge of all these like riprap and all you're getting is redfish?
I had the opposite. Well, yeah, I had the opposite. And I was getting trout where I was supposed to be catching redfish. This was a trip that we took to Grand Isle.
Mm.
And then everywhere would be a promising a redfish ambush spot. I was catching a trout, and it was like a 17-inch trout. And I'm like, man, there should be a redfish right here on the, as this current's going around this island in shallow water, and I'd catch a trout. Yeah, so I had the opposite, but
Not the opposite. Okay, well, yeah, it's been like that for a few trips for me where I was just like, hey, I know there's trout. The trout should still be here. And actually, the reason why I was fishing in this area is because 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I was fishing with Jay out here, and he caught his personal best trout. Uh, it, it it was probably 29 and almost hit that 30 mark. It was at 29 and like 8.5, 9 pounds. And I'm I know that fish is still around there, so I'm trying to find it. But yeah, it was just all redfish. But that got me thinking, hey, if the redfish are, it kind of put the redfish on my mind and started thinking about it. Um, at this time, I'm still fishing in the upper part of Galveston Bay. Typically, by now, I'm heading back towards Galveston, and I've been wanting to do some sight casting, just because there's all these tournaments are out there for redfish, and there's really not really many trout tournaments. So I kind of need to get the redfish game going. So low waters in the back lakes, you have sight casting opportunities. And this past Friday, I went out, and it was we had a cold front come through Thursday. Actually, probably late Wednesday, early Thursday, and I came out Friday. The very beginning of the morning was super low winds. Got out there. Um, I almost was not able to get back there because the entrance to that back lake was just exposed, and I had to drag my kayak over that. I actually almost turned around at that point. I'm like, I don't know if I want to cross 50 yards of sand and just drag my kayak through that. And it wasn't completely exposed. It was like a millimeter of water coming over it, and the tide was coming in. So if I waited around long enough, I would have been able to do that. But I'm like, you know what? If it's like this, that means there's no boats back there. I can have the whole back area to myself. Dragged it, kept going, started getting some deeper cuts back there, started paddling around. And then when I got back there, I found this really cool, like 15-foot hole. I started fishing. I was like, if there's any trout back, it'll be back there. Yeah, I get distracted really easily. So, um, and there's nothing, but every so often I just hear these fish just bust up on the bank, and I'm like, finally, okay, I can't ignore that anymore. I went and looked and stood up in my kayak, and I could see two or three redfish just corralling all these mullet and just just annihilating them. I picked one off, and that was really cool to see because it was just I was using a white and chartreuse bait, so I can see it really well from my vantage point, and it just it's really cool to see when you're reeling in, all of a sudden it just disappears. Um, I got that one. It's nice mid slot. Um, Caught a random flounder doing that too. I was chasing that school around and I caught a random flounder. That was cool. And then I went further back into the lake, and at that point the wind was kicking up, and the shoreline I was fishing at, it was kind of the wind was beating up on that shoreline, and a wave came up, and I saw four redfish in that little wave. I'm like, oh my god, there's a redfish right there. So I stopped and I turned around. I looked for them. I followed them. Uh, you know, I I had two good opportunities at them. I had one of them hit that I missed a hook set and I botched that badly, and I lost that school. And I remember like I can't really sit on the shoreline because it's just I was getting beat up on that shoreline, and I moved to the protected side, and I was sitting back there, and I had on my Bixie motor, I had some weeds kind of get caught in it. So I remember pulling out those weeds, and I hop back in the kayak and I turn around. Oh look, there's just two birds just hovering over this area right there. There's probably fish right there, and it was literally like I didn't move anywhere, and I cast it over there, and I picked it, I picked at it, and eventually I got one. Um, you can look at the video, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/one less cast podcast. You can see my miss. I hook the fish, fight it all the way to the kayak, it pops off. I'm upset, but I'm like, I know there's that school still around because I pulled out that fish pretty quickly. I find the school again, like within a minute or two, get another one to eat, get an exit kayak, pop off. Sad. But after that, it was literally just going around, and even in the wind, I stood up and I just saw so many redfish just swimming around. And that was just a really cool experience because it's been a while since I've actually kind of had those experiences. Anyways, I know I talked a little bit in detail about that. Uh, but yeah, are you excited for to do kind of do those things? I know you don't typically catch redfish. You are a trout guy, same as me, but
I think I've been slacking and calling myself a trout guy lately because I haven't really been fishing for trout, right? But they still excite me. Like catching trout still excites me. It's just my mind is like geared heavily on offshore, big, the bigger fish, fishing those fish. So, you know, once I get caught up with all the things I need to do, definitely gonna spend some more time in Florida, Louisiana, places like that, and the Texas coast offshore, but mainly focused on offshore. Um, will I fish a redfish tournament? I might fish a couple this year. I definitely want to get back into the old hunt. It's just I feel like I lost the drive, man. You know what I mean? I don't have that hunger to win. I don't have that hunger to compete in redfish. Um, yeah, Joshua, you're right. Tarpon from a yak.
yeah, I
But
mean it's literally bigger fish to fry. So.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I mean, it's just, but I really lost my competitive spirit. I think when just seeing, I know there's good tournaments like Saltwater Survival Series. That was a good tournament. Like those people, everybody got along, everybody knew each other. And then some of these other tournaments, it was just I don't know, just I'm not that competitive. I don't have that competitive spirit anymore.
Yeah.
I think
I,
my passion's more of just catching fish, and I think if I do fish tournaments, it'll probably be more just to donate to the pot and just shoot the breeze with the guys at the boat, back at the weigh in and shit like that. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. But I have enjoyed fishing, bass fishing. So I think I posted a picture, but not on one last cast because it was from a bank. Um, it was one of those situations where like nobody was catching nothing, and they're like, oh, they're not here, like they, and I couldn't accept that they weren't here because of the way I was reading the water. To me, the way I read the water is no, they're here, they're just picking and choosing what they want to eat. And I noticed that they were picking them from the bank, and I was able to cast my lure long enough to cast to the other side of this creek or this river or whatever this and some lake where I was able to cast to the other side of it and then slowly bring it in from the bank into the water. And dude, it was just nonstop. I just started catching them and catching them and catching them. I was throwing the green color. What do they call it? Watermelon, right? Is that the watermelon color? The green
Yeah.
with the flakes in it, right?
Hmm.
But it was a crawfish, the crawfish one, and I used it on a weedless. So when I was hitting the bank, or if I was bouncing around trees, shrubs or anything, I wouldn't get so hung up. But the bite on the bass was you had to let them eat it and then set the hook because if they just hit it, some of them, because they were smaller bass, they were 2 to 3 pounders. So they wouldn't get the lure right in their mouth. And I realized that when I set the hook and it come out. And that happened to me twice at the beginning. And after that, I didn't miss any of them. So what I did is I cast it out there and let them eat it. And then when I let them eat it, like I'd feel them and then I'd set the hook. And every hook set was literally like in the corner of the mouth. Maybe like one or two were on the top side. But most of them, all of them were just right on the corner with the hook that I was using. So that was a learning experience for me, bass fishing, um, fishing like Sheldon, right? You're just punching those. There's two ways I fish Sheldon. Oh, well, two main ways. There's actually three ways I fish Sheldon, but two of the main ways I fish them is when there was hydrozilla. I don't know how you say that grass line. You'd work the edges of that, or the other one is you're pitching up against the tree stumps and then you're working the tree stumps and the roots around the trees. What are those? I don't know what those trees are called, but
I think they're like cypress trees. These
cypress
big old.
trees, right?
Yeah.
So those are the two ways. I mean, unless you're fishing the lily pads in the back, right? But other than that, those are the two main ways I fished Sheldon. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like bass fishing a little bit. I know I cracked jokes, but it wasn't. It was fun to figure out a rhythm with nobody being successful and just sitting there, just being patient by reading the water, and making adjustments.
Yeah. And actually, with the hook set thing, it. What is your thoughts on certain jig heads? So, to preface this, um, the way I buy tackle is I look for deals. Like I don't go like super cheap, but I go, I look for deals. So back in the day, they don't do it anymore because I probably took too much of an advantage of the deals that they had. Cyber Monday for Bass Assassin. Um, they would put 50% off everything. Um, and that included number one was that their clearance section. It was 50%. You can take 50% off even the clearance section. So I bought bulk bags of bait. It's like 104 count of saltwater assassin, like discontinued colors. I remember I have so many space guppy colors, and that's one of my favorite colors, which is like a chartreuse and clear with glitter in it. It got replaced with I'm sorry. Yeah, no. It was replaced with Truce Goose, which is a current color, very similar.
I was gonna say
Um,
I thought they have that color still.
yeah, they replaced it with Truce Goose, which is the current color. Anyway, so I have like 5 or 6 bags of these 104 count bulk bags of saltwater assassin, uh, space guppy colors. But also, you could buy their bulk bass assassin jig heads. Um, and I remember like doing the math on it, and it was like something super ridiculously cheap because it's already a bulk, a bulk package of jig heads, and then you got the 50% off of that. So I had a bunch of those. I went through those over the years, and eventually I found that they had um, it's called their booyah shaker. It's a thinner wire than their standard Bass Assassin jig heads. The hook keeper's kind of not the best, but it was a 3 pack for I think like 50 cents. So and it came in a pack of like three or four. So you do the math on that. It's really, really super cheap for jig heads. And I was like, yeah, yeah, Courage still has a bunch. Yeah, I told him about it. We went on one package. But yeah, so I went on a bunch of those, and these redfish that you have to have, like, I know for like redfish tournaments I'll be using something different, but we're just out there. I was just using these booyah shakers, and they work fine. Especially for trout, they work fine. But I was finding that with these redfish, where you need that really strong hook, or maybe it wasn't sharp. I don't know. I just started losing. I lost those redfish. So I was thinking, man, obviously it's not me. So it's
Exactly. No, no, you bring up a good point, right? Like, I
yeah.
don't know if we talked about that. But the jig heads, I think, make a world of difference. Especially like, I've had an instance where, um, how about I just don't mention their name, right? This one jig head. So the way it was, the eye and the hook were like half an inch apart, but they were the perfect height. You know what I'm saying? Like where it hooked out, the edge of that hook and the eye that you tied onto of the hook, they were like half an inch apart, and they were the same height when you held the hook straight, straight. And I kept missing redfish. And as soon as I changed that jig head to one that where the eye leaned out more and it gave me more of an opening, I started hooking fish. But I get into that tendency where, like, I know I can't miss another fish. And I'm like, all I have to do is cut off that jig head, put a new one. But for the life of me, I feel like, no. How many fish can I miss? And I'll sit there and I'll miss like 15. Well, not really, but I'll miss a lot of them. And I know it's my jig head, and I just won't retie it. Matter of fact, the trip that we went down south to Corpus and fished with Colburn, um, and that one was one of those situations where the eye of the jig head was actually part of the jig head. So it was like the lead that molded over and you tied into it.
Mm.
And I even tied a loop knot just because it was so easy to tie, and I should have did a straight knot. And I knew for a fact I would miss way less fish if I just cut that damn jig head up. And I had a fat boy on me, and I knew I should have tied that on. And I was like, I didn't want to do it because I was just, the thing is, like, when you're, for me, it was like we're getting so many hits after every cast, like, and I was still bringing in, like, I'd miss like one out of every. At the beginning, I was missing like one out of every five, and then that number went like one out of every 10, and then I stopped missing fish. But I noticed that I started getting less bites because my presentation wasn't, in my mind. I know the presentation wasn't right because of the jig head. So not only does the jig head contribute to how your presentation, but also when you hook set, right? So I mean, jig heads are very important to get the right ones. Um, there was this one jig head, and I swear by it, they don't make it anymore. It was made by Trokar. I think, what was the name of the bad, something bad? It was a real popular jig head back in, I want to say 5 years ago. Bad Boys jig heads, or Bad Marine jig heads. Anyways,
Oh,
he made it.
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? It's something around those lines.
Was it? I was thinking the naughty hooker, but I'm not 100.
Naughty Hooker. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was it. It was a Naughty Hooker. Chokar made it, and it was called the Eagle Claw. And what it was like a diamond cut, and then where the hook was, that was actually cleaved, and the way it was cleaved, it was so sharp. I swear, like flounder, redfish, they would get a hook straight through the skull with that hook because it was so damn sharp. I've never missed any fish with that. Well, I shouldn't say never. I missed very rare, very few fish with that hook. And the actual the guy that made the naughty hookers said that that was his favorite hook as well. But he discontinued them because he wasn't selling a lot of them. And I don't know how I stumbled on that jig head, but when I tried it, I was like, dude, these are my go-to. Now lately, I like the pre-made ones, the pre-made baits that already have the jig heads in them. Like your, dude, I know what's his name used to have one, but you had to put it together. And I was trying to convince him to make a pre-made one because I really think pre-made baits are the future.
Yeah.
Um,
The naughty hookers. I actually probably still have a couple of them, but they, um, yeah, the plastic would never come off of it. It was just so well made, and eventually, like your bait would just get so mangled up that you would just have to tear it off. Um, and I remember one time that I was using them. This was years ago. It was easier for it was raining, and I was out there. We're catching trout. Um, and I remember finding it was easier for me to cut the jig head out and tie on another jig head with a bait on because I couldn't tear the bait off because my hands were so slippery and I was just trying to rip it out. And it just my hands are slipping. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna cut this off, throw it in my kayak. Do it later, and I just tie on another jig head, put another bait on. So, uh,
yeah, yeah. I think I got lazy over time
yeah,
because back then it was like that. That was the way to fish: jig head in a plastic, you know. And
yeah.
but yeah, it was a trocar eagle claw. That's what it was called. It was a trocar eagle claw by Naughty Hookers, and man, I wish I still had those jig heads. I think I'd tie one of those on for these trout. Speaking of jig heads, the sizes. I know a lot of people like the 3/16, 1/8. I think even 1/16 quarter ounce. I definitely like a quarter ounce on windier days. You know, if I'm fishing deeper water. How about you?
That I think I've said this before on previous episodes. My go to my not my go to my default is always a quarter, and then I adjust wherever I'm going, um, and there's been a few times. So I'm still of the mindset that for fish, if you actively go and find feeding fish, you can throw whatever and you'll catch them. There are certain situations whenever like the tide's just not moving the right way, the fish are scattered, whatever reason that that a quarter ounce with that plastic is just not cutting it. The tide's moving slowly, so I'm going to throw on a 16th um, or an eighth so that it moves with the current a little bit more than what a quarter would be. Uh, and now I'm finding some. Obviously, I still believe most of the time that color doesn't matter, but of course there are times when color does matter. So, um, yeah, so it's a quarter, and then I adjust from there. And but the reason why I brought up this whole jighead thing was because I was talking um, uh, with oh my gosh, the name is George from Salty Head, um, and I just remember Daniel Duong. I see videos of him freaking boat flipping, 29, 30-inch redfish. um, and it got me thinking, especially I know with those guys who red do tournament red fishing, they must have their jig head game down because they need to, you know. So maybe I'll try on those because I have a couple of those salty heads. Next time I'm out there side casting and give that a shot. So
So what do you how do you feel about the pre-made ones? Are you do you like those or like the tsunamis and the storms and
no,
the egrets? I think they got one. They got a lot of pre-made jig heads.
yeah, they have the egret has like the vixen shad, um,
They used to have the
and
sand eels. I think they took those off too. They took those
I
sand
think
eels.
that was the vixen shad. It was a long kind of paddle tail. Um,
The
uh,
vixens are the smaller ones.
oh
The
really?
sand
Okay,
eels
yeah,
are the longer ones.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, I think they got rid of the sand eels.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like I like I want the choice of like what weight I put into it. Obviously, like I said, I'll start with a quarter ounce. That's why I'm kind of excited for when Michael for his knock and tail, he has that shrimp, the shrimp coming out that he's considering. I was talking to him at the Houston Fishing Show. He's considering making the naked one, where it's just you can put whatever jig head you want on it. As a
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, as opposed to the pre-made
Right,
one where it's just whatever weight it is.
right.
So yeah, I think I prefer the choice of that. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, so Mike used to have control descent back in the day.
yeah,
That lure, it was probably the most underrated lure because you had to do a lot to the lure to make it right. You had to put the foam in it, then
hmm
you had to put the hook in it. But I fished that thing, and dude, I was catching big trout with that because that lure or how you rigged it would suspend in the water in a way that no other bait would. And I guess it just never caught on. But yeah, that was a killer bait. Um, but yeah, one of those mini baits that were really good, but I guess never caught on to the consumer to stay in business. Um,
it's because it looked weird, and people
it,
hate weird looking things.
well, he had another one besides the one that looked like it had an extra tail.
Yeah,
Um, but he had another one that was just the straight tail.
yeah.
Um, yeah. But anywho, so my favorite jig head. What jig head were you throwing for the redfish?
It
Do you?
was the Booyah Shaker from Bass Assassin.
Oh, see, I still have a purple knocking tail on one of my fishing poles. That reminds me. Yeah, that's one that I'm still using on my walk up spots. That thing is tore up. And what I've done is I've turned the lure and put the hook in the other one. And after that gets worn out, and I turn the lure just so the tail's like just messed up. The tail still moves on it, great, but I just keep turning it. I probably need to put on a new lure. But the jig head part of it is like trout teeth have torn it up so bad. Um, Probably need to get a new one.
Yeah,
Put on a new bait.
yeah.
I still fish that knocking tail on my walk up spots, so it's doing real great.
Oh yeah. And like I said, I'm excited for Michael's. He has the new knocking tails are coming out with the TPE plastic, so it doesn't get torn up as much.
Mm.
Um, I'm excited for those when they come out. Which, by the way, he had a popping cork come out. I believe he released it either this past week or the week before that. So you could probably find them online or at some of your retailers. Um, yeah, so those knocking corks are super loud.
Does he have that combination, the pop and cork, with one of his shrimp?
Well, the shrimp hasn't been released yet, but
Oh, okay.
I'd imagine at some point that's going to be a thing. So
Right, right. Because I know DOA has one, and that one's a pretty good one. But I would like to see what Michael has coming out.
yeah,
Yeah.
and, and actually another thing that I learned while I was out there again. So I'm out there, and my typical setup is I have either 20 or 30 pound braid depending on what setup I have, and then I have 20 pound either mono or fluoro leader. Um, and I thought back to whenever I lost like my second redfish of the day. I was thinking back to Jake Adame, who I fished with during the Galveston Redfish series a couple of seasons ago, and he's like, "Yeah, I have like 50 pound braid, and it's just straight. That way, that whenever I get a redfish, I could literally just pull them in."
Mhm.
And I was thinking, man, maybe I should have done that. Just if I knew I was going out for redfish, might as well just go all out.
Yeah, it was what's his name? Not Brandon Perez. The other one. What's his cousin's name? They He's the one that got me fishing heavier braid.
Yeah,
Alex.
yeah, Alex, yeah,
Alex. He used to fish a lot of tournaments back in the day. Um, but yeah, he's the one that says, "Man, I put 50-pound braid on him. I just yank them in because I ain't got time to play around with them or fool around with because I'm trying to catch another redfish."
yeah.
Actually, he's not the sole reason. One of the other reasons is because I kept snapping 10 pound. So I went up to 20, and then I kept snapping 20 on tournament day. So once I went to like 30, that like no more snapped line, and it might be the way that I hook set might be one of the reasons I snapped a lot of lines. But yeah, so obviously adjusted over the years.
Yeah.
But so you're straight. Are you still leader line?
No, I was using lead because this is my standard setup. I just I use this to catch trout. I'm not I'm not I even though I the game plan was for that day to specifically target redfish. I didn't change any of my gear or any setup. I just went with what I had. Um, and that was another thing I was thinking about. Maybe I could have done better. Another thing that I should have had on. See, this is just showing how woefully unprepared I was. Um, knowing this back lake is probably gonna be super shallow. I'm gonna have opportunities to sight cast these redfish. I just went out with my glasses. I didn't take it. I didn't put on my contacts and put on my polarized sunglasses. I'm sure I missed so many fish doing that. There was a. I remember I was sitting in the middle of the lake after I lost those two, and I just stood up and I'm like, man, I could like see like 10 feet in front of me, but after that, I can't see anything. Um, and like I was pushing myself around, and every so often I would see redfish just scoot off. Like it
Mhm.
was probably just sitting there,
Right.
and I didn't even see it. And eventually, what I ended up doing to catch more redfish was I had to go to the shoreline because it was easier for me to see them because their backs would be out of the water.
Right.
Or if there was a wave, I could see them hop up on the wave. So yeah, that was another mistake on my part of just not being prepared and not being able to see my target.
Yeah, I try to stand up on the kayak as much as possible now when I'm well not now, but if I'm targeting redfish, because I feel like once I started standing up, I was able to see with my glasses. I was able to see the water better and see the redfish better. So you know, I bring a push pole with me or my stakeout pole. So I use that, or sometimes I'll use my paddle as I'm standing up. Um, so I mean that's definitely something that I added to the arsenal as a technique. Is if I'm going into a back lake or something, I'll try to stand up on my kayak. Sometimes when I stand up, they for some reason they see me and they spook off.
Yeah,
So it's one of those things like you're hoping that they don't you don't spook them, But yeah, it's sometimes they don't see you.
yeah,
And it's like, oh man, there he is, and you'll cast right on him, and it's
yeah,
those are always money shots.
yeah. And again, this is I've been a Revo guy for a majority of my kayak fishing life, or more of the speed guy. So like Tarpon 160, where you have like what is like a 27 inch wide kayak, um, and yeah, so standing up was never really a thing for me, and until I started fishing these redfish tournaments, I'm putting myself in positions where I have to see what I'm casting at. Um, and so the links is real nice because it's just I don't have to think about it. Where with like a Revo, I had to think about me standing up. Okay, am I balanced, or where's my center of gravity? What's the water doing? What's the wind doing? Whereas with like a PA or the Revo, the PA or the Lynx is just, oh, I'm just going to stand up and I'll figure it out.
Right.
So it's real nice. Um,
Yeah,
and again,
The Revo doesn't have that feeling that the Outback or the PA has, like, oh, I might be pushing it, and there's that little resistance you get. That Revo, if it turns it, you're gonna
oh
turn
yeah,
in it.
oh yeah.
Like, yeah.
I could stand up in the Revo. I could stand up in the Tarpon 162, but it was more I had to think about it.
Mm,
Because I couldn't just like, oh, I want to stand up. It was like, okay, I need to, where's that wind doing? What's the current doing? Okay, if I step here, where's my center of gravity? I can't lean too far left or right.
right.
Um, and then, like I said, with the PA, I haven't actually paddled the new Outback style yet. But it's like I said, it's the PA light, and then the links, you just stand up and you're fine. It's just and I think I told the story at some point too. Fishing with Jake Adame during the Redfish series, we were just sitting. and there's redfish just blowing up everywhere, and we're just waiting, and it was this exposed reef that was with the tide that was outgoing. And I remember 6 o'clock or whatever the first cast happened, made that cast, hooked up, and because I was sitting down in my kayak and the redfish ran towards the reef, my line got caught on an exposed oyster sitting up out of the water, and it cut me off, and that sucked. So again, another reason why standing up in a kayak is good, but not. I wouldn't say it's absolutely necessary, but it is a cool thing and a nice feature to have.
That's actually happened to me in Titlim Tatlum, one of those back little small lakes off of Titlim Tatlum.
Yeah,
They're saying the exposed reef was out, and that redfish ran around one of those little things that were. It might have been a pipe or something with reef on it, or maybe the reef was coming up, but he ran on the backside and snapped the line.
yeah.
Um, it's interesting. Um, but I don't know if you guys have never fished Titlim Tatlum. That's definitely a fun spot to fish this time of year, and yeah, especially this time of year.
It's a little
Um,
bit of a paddle, but it's not that bad.
yeah. Oh, wait up. So I haven't even noticed the launch spots. I mean, they still have the that RV. What is that? Boat
Uh,
launch. That one's still
yeah,
open,
that's still open.
but definitely take in consideration with tide movement. Um, that tide moves through there really fast. So try to go on a lower tide days or some kind of moving, but not too much moving, like not big tide movements, because you might get in trouble.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, story about that. Um, Back when I first started kayaking, I took my dad out. We've been waiting. So if you're looking on the map of San Luis Pass, you have the left side, which is Christmas Bay, and the right side, which is like the West Galveston Bay. We launched from the right side, and we were just fishing over there, and we were actually on some small trout, which is it was fun for me. Um, and I remember noticing, oh, I can't see our car anymore. And my dad and I were together, and he's like, oh yeah, we're floating really fast away from the car, so let's just paddle back. And I remember trying to paddle against that current. That was, and I think the main mistake, because I was just young and dumb at that point. I was paddling into the current instead of like going diagonally or like across it. Um, and like you couldn't go anywhere. You'd go like 10 yards and then you take a break and then you lose 50 yards. Um, and eventually what we ended up like just drifting all the way over to um the bridge on that opens up to the Gulf. And we just beached our kayak there. And my dad's like, I guess I'm gonna have to walk. So he walked like that 2 miles to go get our car.
were y'all by the lighthouse or?
We launched a little bit past the lighthouse.
Oh, dang, that's a
Yeah,
stretch.
yeah, it's just a stretch. Um, and uh, I was young, and I was like, oh, this, yeah, let's just go. But yeah, I remember sitting there, and I was using live shrimp, and I was just catching ladyfish and catching fish off the bank right there, and like hour and a half later, my dad drives up. You know, um,
Back then, there used to be. I mean, that was the. I love that shoreline because you could. There's so many hidden spots
oh yeah,
that you can launch off. Now they're all communities, canefish here. They're all blocked in.
yeah,
But man, back then you used to be able to pull up where they're barely building a house, pull up right behind them, and then drop your kayak, and then get some really good fishing, really good sight cast and redfish, and that's a lot of good memories on that shoreline.
oh yeah. You go out deeper, you catch your trout, come back in and sight cast a redfish, and you finish out the day with that.
Right, right. There was some areas, I guess, if you were on that flat, right, when you come in by the lighthouse, that one where the grass line, where there used to be a good healthy grass line.
Hmm.
That's not there no more.
No.
There might be some kind of a grass line, but it used to be a good, noticeable, healthy grass line. And you would go up to that grass line, and the fish would go in and out of those grass lines.
Oh yeah.
And it was like if the tide was moving, the fish were feeding. Didn't matter what time of day. All you had to do is tide was moving. If you went there early in the morning, sometimes you were lucky enough to hear the red and trouts just ambush the bait right up on the shoreline.
That
You
still
didn't
happens. That still happens though.
you didn't even need to step into the water, because when you stepped in certain areas, when you stepped into the water, there was like a 1 foot drop, or there was a mini drop, right? And they were just all right there. You could just stand up, not even get your feet wet, and catch redfish, catch big trout. Um, the grass is different there now.
Yeah, it's not as full. Um, it's also, instead of being like all put together, it's very sparse. Um, I really wish I took a picture of this, but I was coming back in after a really good day of trout fishing out there on the kayak, and I was paddling up. And I know that there's a um, back then, uh, there was a pothole basically, um, that for whatever, I think it was because there's a bunch of shell like on the bottom right there, so just the grass didn't grow right there. And I was passing by it in the kayaks, and I stood up on my knees, and it's literally like, it's one of those pictures that you see out of Florida where you have this really, really nice grass. And I remember the wind was blowing slightly, and like the water's kind of rippled, so the grass kind of flowed with it. And it was just a circle, and it's sand and I guess shell on the bottom. And there's this 26, 27-inch redfish just sitting in there, chilling. And I'm like, dang, that's so cool. Um, and I tried to make, I tried to catch that redfish, and I bomped it on the head. Like I literally hit it on the head, and it just blew up and darted off. But it was just so cool whenever that grass was full, and there was so much fish in there. Yeah, the edge of that grass line, you could literally when the water was clear, just travel up and down that grass line with top water, and you would just catch fish, because there'll be fish sitting either in the grass or the outside of it, and they'll just blow up on it. And during the fall, when the grass, whenever it got colder, so some of the grass died and floated to the top, people wouldn't fish over there because there's just so much grass around. But that's when there was so much fish in that grass too. You have these mats, and you'd basically be like bass fishing, hitting mats, with, I would use like a half ounce, it would be like 2 foot deep, and I'm using half ounce jig heads, so I can just punch through that mat, and it'll hit the bottom. And of course, if you jig it up, you get caught in grass right away. But if you just barely jig it up off the bottom, and there's sometimes fish under it. Um, so yeah, I I miss those days.
Or the days you would go wade the flats with the same people every morning. Y'all all sit there at the trucks, get your gear on. Everybody's there pulling up. Hey man, I was here yesterday sharing stories. As you're putting all your waders on and getting all your gear ready, y'all go walk out there with your stringers and you get your little, nets and whatnot, and y'all stand out there in the line and just start casting, and
Yeah,
birds are working, and you know, I like that area both ways, kayak and wading. I think I like it better wading.
well,
Um,
I kayak now. I like to kayak out there to get to other waiting spots
right,
out
yeah,
there.
yeah. There's some deep guts that kayak helps you get past, to get to those shallow islands,
Yeah,
that you can wade. What I learned is those shallow islands, there's trout on them.
yeah,
Some people have the habit of standing on the island, throwing into the gut, or throwing into, which is a habit. But what I've started doing is I started working that shallow area that's like shin deep or half shin deep, and big blow ups, big fish. So if you're definitely decide to do that, try to fish those shallow areas. Throw
oh yeah,
top water a couple times and see if you get any blow ups or hits. It's worth a try
oh
for
yeah.
sure.
And actually, the for me, my secret is that those shallow areas, sometimes you have this current running through them, and it's very difficult to work top waters because it's just the current's just really swift over there. Uh, that's when you put on the wake bait and let the the tide do the work for you. Because you eventually you cast, like, usually what I do is I cast perpendicular to the tide so that I can work it back towards me, and it just sweeps the area. Um, and sometimes just working a little bit too is just too fast of a tide to really do that effectively. So then you put on the wake bait, and basically you just cast downwind of you, or down current of you, and you're just it's always your bait's always moving. It's moving because that current's pushing against it, and you just reel
And
it in,
making a lot of noise.
making a lot of noise. Reel it in, let it sit. It was going to do its thing. Reel it in, let it sit, do its thing, and and a really cool thing is that sometimes those fish, they get fired up. They blow up on it, but the current's moving so fast, they blow up and miss it. But you don't have to do anything. You just let it sit there. Or with you, you can even let it, release the spool, let it float back a little bit, and then re-engage it. And they'll just keep blowing up, blowing up, blowing up, and then finally they'll hit it, and they'll pin himself, and then you get that fish. But it's also a different way to fight too, because you
Right.
have
Yep.
that current strong, and they'll the fish will use that current to their advantage, and they'll pull off a lot. Just gotta know how to play it.
Yeah. Yep. For sure, man. I never thought about this, but I wonder if you do. They still sell hunchbacks?
Yeah, at Academy, they're I think either 12.99 or 14.99, one of the two.
So typically, I would throw the Yozuri, right?
Yeah.
Those Yozuri wake baits.
Hmm.
I wonder what a hunchback would do on that.
No, that's
These-
what I'm talking. I've been that's I use the hunchbacks.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, that's the
Oh, okay.
hunchbacks I'm using. Yeah, they're just super loud, super big, um, and
Yeah.
they work
That
so well.
Yeah, because when that current's moving, those fish are moving. You
Yeah.
know, so that's yeah, I was just curious about that. But you know, another good thing about like the shallow area is is the what is that called? I'm trying to think of the name of the bait, but it dives but it doesn't come on the top of the water, and it stays like at 6 inches. So it's also a wake bait, but it never comes up to the surface. It's got a weight to it. Is that a wake bait?
No, I think that's a suspending twitch bait.
This is yeah, that one. I like
So
that bait. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the other bait I like around that area is the Mirrodine,
Right,
or the
right.
Softine for um the what do you call it, the Corky imitation, the Softine. Um, those work really well, especially when the water's clear. Having a little bit of flash in it is just the only problem with that is you have these random species come through there, like Spanish mackerel,
Sharks. I had a
sharks.
shark. I had a
Yeah,
sharks tear up one of those fat boys that slow suspending fat boy.
yeah,
I had a shark just hammer that so hard.
yeah. And
Huge blow up.
and
There's a lot of
speaking
sharks in that area.
Yeah, speaking of sidecasting, I was out there one day and it was dead calm, like dead calm. And I was just standing up in my Revo, and I what I was doing was I was seeing trout and redfish, and I was casting a Mirrodine a little bit away from them, bring it in, they would just hammer it. Um, and I was doing that, I was catching fish, and it basically, as the day kind of wore on, the wind picked up just a little bit, so there was a little bit of ripple on the surface. It was made a little bit more difficult to see. And at that point, I was just casting to movement that I would see on when I was just, if I would see movement with fish cruising on the top of the water. Um, and then I saw in the corner of my eye, I saw movement. And I made a cast for it. And as I cast it towards, I turned and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, shoot, it's like a 4 foot shark. And I tried to, like, I was like, I was like, I need to, like, stop it. So I re-engaged the reel, and I kind of, like, it just hit the water. And I backlashed a little bit. And I'm like, oh shoot. And I was trying to pick up this backlash, and that shark turned right when that bait hit the water and just swam up to it. And I'm like, oh shoot, come on, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And I got the backlash undone, re-engaged the reel, and that shark just annihilated my Mirrodine.
Oh,
Like, basically came mouth out of the water, and
oh,
I hooked it. And I'm like, oh man. And I'm
I
like, okay, my goal now is to get my Meridian back. So I was fighting that shark, and it started dragging me around everywhere. I remember Jay, like, he was like, "What you got over there?" I'm like, "I think I have a shark. I have a shark," and it like drug me off somewhere, and eventually just broke my line because of just the teeth. But
right.
yeah, there goes my $8 Meridian.
Yeah, ouch, that one hurts, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I think me and Joshua, he's a guy now. He was just on here. We were once fishing Christmas Bay, and we saw a shark. We were chasing him with the top water, trying to get him, and then finally he like he committed. I don't remember if he blew up and missed it or he went towards it and then he saw us and swam off. But that was like about a 4 footer, like a 4 footer bull shark. But we saw him fin out of the water, and me and him were chasing schools of trout when it was a whole bunch of birds working. So we're just chasing wherever the birds were working. We'd go over there and be like, "Oh, these schools too small. Let's go over here." And then I was like, "All right, let's you know try bigger bait in these smaller trout." And sure enough, we're catching the bigger trout. And we saw the shark, and we just decided we're having so much fun that day catching trout that we decided to chase down a shark, a bull shark, and have fun with him. But anyhow, good times, good times.
Yep. I know we were supposed to be talking about low water
Redfish.
redfish, but we kind
Oh,
of
snaps.
deviated away from that. No, that's my fault too. Once you get into the mode of just talking about old memories, uh, it kind of goes from there.
Yeah.
But there's another question that I had here that I wrote down when I was thinking about what we're talking about today. Um, I'm gonna I wanted to ask your opinion because you're a little bit, you know more about this than I do. Like I said, redfish is really not my thing. Um, at some point, maybe it will become my thing, but at this point, it's not. So, in the situation of last Friday, where we had these low water conditions, the tide was incoming a little bit. I spent more time than I should have. Like, so in my head, I was like, I'm going to go back there and sight cast because I think this is going to give me a very good opportunity to go and sight cast fish. And that's what ended up happening. But I wasted probably a couple of hours along the way towards that back lake. I was fishing those curves in that the channel where it would carve out, usually it'd be like 2 foot or whatever, and in the every single curve you have this like 4 or 5 foot gut sit there. Um, and I've caught redfish in those before too. Famously, not famously, but the one I remember specifically, there was I think it was a Toys for Tots tournament. I fished with Curtis, and it was blowing 30 miles an hour, like cold front coming through. But the reason why we went to a back lake is because I know all those fish are gonna be flushing out. They're gonna coming out, and that was brutal because we were paddling against the current the entire time. Um, but every single cut, this curve where you have a 3, 4, 5, 6 foot, little gut right there, there'd be a redfish. And we ended up turning in our limit. We didn't get in the money, but I was really happy for us to get turned in that limit for with those conditions. So for that day, every single gut that I hit, I just spent time trying to fish it. I didn't catch any fish out of it. Um, is that something that, would you stick to the game plan, or would you kind of, as fishermen, should we kind of hit every single spot that we think has fish?
Yeah, for a tournament, or are you trying to catch?
Just
Yeah,
in
yeah.
general.
It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm trying to target just catching fish, right, having a good time catching a whole bunch of fish, would you make adjustments? Is what you're saying? Would you make
Yeah.
adjustments to capitalize in these ambush spots? Right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. Um, Man, it really depends on what mood I'm in, right? I know I have different ones where like I'm determined, right? I'm out there fishing and I know there's fish there, and I'm determined. I will sit there and cast and work that area, and and in that specific scenario, I like a big gulp, right? I don't know. there's something about that scented lure, or even if you have like some lure that you really like, even like a knocking tail, right? But I would put a lot of Procure on it, because sometimes those fish wade into that current, and if you're not presented, I've learned this fishing lights, and I've fished in the causeway. These fish like a bait a certain way. Anything outside of that certain way, they won't even turn their heads. They won't. They're not interested. But if you present it the right way, the way they want it, I mean, it's like one after another, and you sit there and you're like, I threw everything in the sink at them and they didn't bite, but I threw this little ass shrimp, uh, and I threw it way up current for it enough to sink down and barely even twitch it. And I don't know if Justin's on here; he can testify against this. You barely even move it. Boom! It was a 9 pound redfish. I mean, we had spots, and Jay Lee probably knows this area. It's in his backyard. But there's some spots that these redfish, these 9, 10 pound redfish, even, I mean, anywhere from 7 to 8 pound, they like this shrimp, or they like this bait in a way, uh, that it's almost barely moving, and it's floating with the current as a weak bait. And when you present it like a weak bait and it's coming down that current like a weak bait, they like to ambush that. But if you throw a heavier jig head, you throw a heavier bait, and you're ripping it through it, they won't even turn their heads. They're not interested in that. Um, since Jay Lee put some laughing faces, so I guess he does know what I'm talking about. But I mean, I've been in situations where the trout, they like what do you call those? A wake bait, but the bigger fish, they want it ripped through. So they're in that current and they want it upstream, and you come, but you have to burn it, and you're burning it, and you're like, you know, and when you're doing it that way, that yielded bigger trout. But I mean, obviously, you're trying to target redfish. I've been in a situation; it was the exact same way. Same way. They didn't want that bait down, going like down on the lower column fast. They wanted that bait up high in the higher column real fast. And then there's been instance where they want that bait on the bottom end, slowly going up, like slowly coming up in that big current, 10, 12 feet of water. And so you have to have a heavier bait, and you're just slowly coming up that bait like you're a mullet trying to make it, so and so it's definitely, there's a lot of like thought process of how you would adjust to those situations, reading the water, what's in the water, what do they want. So I mean, there would be a lot of mindset that goes into how would I how would I adjust to this spot, and see if it works all the way down on those guts all the way back, because most of the time it does, right?
Yep.
That same situation works on the same damn gut, the next one behind me and the one behind that one. Sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes.
Yeah.
Most, yeah.
Yeah. So it was, to me, it ultimately ended up being, it's not a waste of time because I learned that, at least in the situation I was in, uh, there wasn't really any active fish within those guts. But it took me 2 hours to switch over to what I should have been doing, which is going to the back lake and side casting for them. Because I would hit every single gut, and I'd be like, okay,
That's
if
no
I,
challenge. You want the easy redfish.
yeah, but it was just like, when I literally, when I got to the back, the entrance to that back lake, and I was fishing that little 15-foot hole, right when I got there, I heard redfish just busting up in the back. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna, this is weird because I wasn't expecting a 15-foot hole here. So I started fishing it, um, and didn't get anything. And of course, every single gut along the way up, I didn't get anything either. Uh, but obviously, there's fish back there, and to me, it's a learning experience because now I know I have more information about the area. Maybe on a low tide, maybe there's really not as many fish in there as in the back. I don't know, but I just remember along the way back, and I was thinking, when I was leaving, I was like, man, what happened? What would have happened if I went straight to the back at the very beginning? You know, would it have? Would I have?
So that's a gamble, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's a gamble. Yeah,
I know I've been in tournament day and it's like, man, we should have done this at the beginning. But honestly, the more that I fish, sometimes I learn that those fish are not in those back lakes right away early in the morning. They actually just went back to the lakes or they just started feeding. Like they've been back here the whole time, but you'll see them and they haven't feeding. And when the bite turns on, then they decide to eat. So
yeah,
you really don't know, and it's just chalk it up to experience and learning lessons.
yeah,
Um, you know, I've been in situations where I'm casting over a half a foot of shell or reef, and within like 10 minutes, the redfish bite turned on, and they were just over that shell feeding. Right? They came out of the gut and came over the shell and started feeding. And with the 10 minutes I was casting over there, because I always catch fish here. Um, uh, this is in Sabine, right?
yeah.
I'm not going to tell you exact spot because Sabine's pretty big,
No, tell
but
us where.
there's a there's a gut, right, and there's shell, and I'm fishing, and I was like, I always catch fish here. Why they're not feeding? And within 10 minutes, I think I took a phone call, something happened, or I went to go help somebody out, and then as I'm coming back, one pop. So I was like, you know what? Let me just wait a little bit. Two pops, and then they just go crazy, right? I just let it fester, and then once because I'm seeing the bait, right? It's going over, right, and it's moving in a way that it looks like it has fish around it because they're not all scattered. They're still in a ball, but they're moving in a ball, and so and I'm like, there has to be fish here. So I went, came back, and then I watched them. Once they started blowing it up, I was like, I just sat there and waited for a little bit longer. So it got real busy, and then I just started, bam, I yanked out three real quick. And then by the time I went to go get my buddy and come back, they were gone.
Hmm.
I was like, they're over here. You got to cut. Sometimes I hate to like when you catch one and then you're like, hey, come over here. And you done scared the school, right? Or so it's like sometimes I try to catch two and then I go invite them. Hey, look, I caught two in a row. Or hey, the trip that we took to Louisiana, um, this is a good trip. I might post a picture. It's not a good picture because there's like something like 50 redfish, Louisiana, big old hogs. So it's not a good picture because the big fish kill. But we all ate good. We all ate. So um, it was me, Austin, and a group of us. So my shout out to my buddy. I remember his name. He's the one that kind of pointed us in the right. Eric Marbach. He pointed us in the right direction, and then I made the adjustments. It was freezing cold. There was ice on the kayak. The guys decided to buy live bait, dead shrimp, whatever. They posted up on the area that he gave us the note, like, hey, it's around here. As I'm making adjustments and I'm thinking, I'm punching this deep gut, and then they got rock growings. These guys posted up at the edge of the bank where there's a deep gut channel that goes this way and another channel that goes this way. It was right there by a fort something. Um, and then boom, I got a hit. And I'm like, okay, that's just one hit. Cast it again. Boom, I caught one. I said, hey, Austin, y'all guys need to come down here. I'm catching redfish right here by this rock growing. And then soon enough, there's like 8 of us. There's a lot of us. Basically, we all caught our limit. So I don't know what the number was really. And so we all come down, and I said, hey, man, there's redfish. This is the area we need to fish. They post up on the bank on the opposite end of that. And then me and Austin make our ways around, start punching the rock growings. And we just tore up they stayed on that point where I missed one, caught one. And they stayed on that point, and they fished that in, and they caught a whole bunch of redfish, and then I caught working the rock growing, and we found a good amount in a cove. Uh, but that's just making the adjustment. And damn it, I forgot what we were talking about. Got carried away.
No, no. I think it's a good lesson. Um, you don't know. until you're out there, that's one thing. And then, you're right. If I went straight back there to the back legs, it could have been dead until 2 hours later, whenever it turned on.
Right.
Um, and then whenever it was dead, I may have been discouraged enough to leave, and I would have never known. So yeah, it's all about making adjustments. Um, Everything's a learning experience, and I like you just roll with it, and you figure it out as you go. Uh, but yeah, I think that's good insight for everybody to know, just to roll with it and to make adjustments as you go.
Yeah, once you figure out the pattern, that's definitely definitely something to stick to. You figure out how they want it, how they're moving. Use your experience of being on the water. Trust your feelings. Because I wasn't going to accept the fact that we spent all this money to go to Louisiana and we're not going home with no fish. Because I think it was the day before we fished this shallow flat area that they used to catch a whole bunch of redfish, and that wasn't the case. It was like ice on our kayaks. We're not going to catch them in the marsh. There was some deep guts there, um, so I had to call a friend, and he kind of pointed us in the right direction. Obviously, he didn't tell me where they were at. I had to make the adjustments and follow my instincts, and it was a really good day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're kind
Cheers.
of over on time right now.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks again for your insight, and yeah, I'm just excited. It's getting warmer. I'm starting to head back towards the island to get back on what should be the patterns around now, and just looking forward to it. Just before I hop off, to want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Knock and Tail Lures. If you're looking, we've been used talking about that throughout the show. Looking for a great soft plastic and eventually some new offerings that Michael's coming out with. Go to knockandtaillures.com and you can find those there. Dirty South Kayak Anglers are looking for a Facebook group to join, talking about fishing up and down in Texas Coast. Go look up DSKA or Dirty South Kayak Anglers on Facebook. 4A Printing, Aaron is doing some great stuff. If you're looking for custom merch, such as buffs or towels or anything like that, he can help you figure out what you need and hook you up. And of course, Brittany Solesky, if you're looking for real estate here in Houston, either residential or commercial, give her a call, 281 740 0498. And yeah, and of course, I definitely want to give a shout out to Matagorda Kayak Fishing. If you want to join that Facebook group, strictly Matagorda, it's probably going to be. Actually, I think I can announce it now. Um, so, Matagorda Kayak Fishing Incorporated, it's a nonprofit that just formed up, and I've been kind of volunteering as going to be volunteering as their marketing director. So stay tuned for some stuff coming out there. They have the Spring Slam tournament that I announced early at the beginning of shows, Saturday, April 12th. If you look that up, they'll have rules and stuff like that you can find. It's a kayak tournament. One or two man teams, $100 entry fee. So go and check that out. Uh, but looking forward to that. Merrill, do you have any last call of wisdom before we head off for tonight?
I wish I had wisdom. No, shout out to AFCO. Just gonna shout out to AFCO Gear. They have everything you need for fishing gear, and just want to give those guys a shout out. They've been taking care of me for many years now, and I'm just blessed to be a part of their group.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we'll see you everybody on the water, tight lines, and if you're looking for more stuff to read and all that, go to our website, onelastcastpodcast.com. But until then, y'all guys have a good one.
Take care.